Good afternoon. My name is Bradley Venice. I am a teacher at a small rural high school, and the project that I chose is the barriers of, the benefits to, and best practices to implement a social emotional learning program. I am completing this program as a partial fulfillment for a master's degree in education, specifically educational leadership. If you have any further questions for me, you can email me at bradley.venice@ksc.keene.edu. So why did I choose this topic? In the last year, students' social and emotional health have taken a major hit. With the COVID-19 pandemic forcing people into isolation and a lack of outside contact, more students and educators are suffering from mental distress. This has caused school districts to look more closely at what they offer students under the guise of social emotional learning, or SEL. While SEL has been around for a number of years, it is taking on new significance in the past year due to the pandemic. There has been a renewed interest in how SEL is delivered, the lessons that it reinforces, and how it is tied to the rest of the curriculum the district has to offer. Finally, I, as a teacher, have been part of delivering SEL to students, but have always felt that it was done in a haphazard manner and that there was a more appropriate way to deliver these lessons. So my research questions. I had 3 questions that I was trying to answer through this research. The first is, what are the barriers to delivering social emotional learning? This is barriers that the district faces, barriers that the staff faces, and barriers that the student faces, because they're all a little different. Question number 2 was, what are the benefits of SEL to students? I think it was very important to get answers to that questions from the people who deliver it. And number 3, what is the best practice for implementing social emotional learning in a school district? So my methodology. I used 3 points of data in this project. The first was an administrator interview. This administrator interview took place at the end of a school day, was one-on-one between the researcher and the interview subject. The administrator received the questions in advance so that they could formulate their answers before the questions were asked. The second point of data was a focus group. For the focus group, 3 teachers were used. 2 were middle school teachers and 1 was a high school teacher. For this focus group, the researcher did not facilitate the focus group. An outside person facilitated the meeting while the researcher took notes. The third data point that was used was the researcher's journal. The researcher had the journal for approximately 8 months, creating notes and observations throughout the year. So results. For the benefits of social emotional learning, both the staff members, the administrator, the literature review, and the journal pointed out many benefits. There were academic benefits, there were behavioral benefits, and there were benefits for learning disabled and special education population. Academically, students have historically been shown to have a higher GPA when there's effective social emotional learning happening at the school. There are decreases in behavioral referrals and behavioral problems in general. And for our learning disabled and SPED population, these students often have difficulty expressing emotions or recognizing emotions both in themselves and in their peers. Social emotional learning programs have been found to increase awareness in learning disabled students and special education students in relation to explaining and controlling their own emotions. There's also a large relationship component in social emotional learning. Just the act of sitting in a classroom and delivering these lessons can provide you with a better connection with students, gives you some insight into who these students are, and it gives the student a sense that the person delivering the lesson cares about them and could pay off down the line. If they have a problem, they feel like they can come to that person. It's also a positive school-wide intervention as opposed to negative interventions like discipline with negative consequences. This is a positive one. It also allows the teacher or staff member delivering the SEL to identify who needs more intervention. So who needs maybe a tier 2 or a tier 3 behavioral intervention that needs to go a little more in depth, possibly with a counselor or social worker. There are also some barriers to implementing social emotional learning. Both teachers and administrators say that a lack of support can stop them from fully embracing social emotional learning. That includes things like professional development time, because teachers need professional development time to learn about these programs and learn how to implement them effectively. There becomes a sense that it's not a priority to the district. So if they don't feel supported, teachers and administrators don't feel supported, and they sense that the district does not support the initiative, then they're less likely to give their full effort in the initiative. There's a feeling often that too much is going on, that SEL has become just another initiative, and that they don't want to add another thing onto their plate of their already busy schedules. And then there's a lack of skills. Some staff members don't feel comfortable with the topics that SEL brings up. Some staff members feel like a counselor would be better suited to address the needs. And then, quite frankly, some staff members struggle with their own emotional health. And if they're struggling with their emotional health, we can't expect them to deliver the kind of instruction that these students need. So, implementation. There are 6 steps that are recommended for implementation. The first is to make it a district priority. When you make SEL a district priority, or you make any initiative a district priority, it takes on a certain amount of meaning. And because it takes on that meaning, people are more likely to want it to succeed. The second is to integrate it in the classroom. Not only should SEL be delivered in its own form, but it should also be incorporated through things like skill instruction, general teaching practices, and other academic instruction. Some examples of this might include group work, reinforcing individual and collective responsibility, or understanding positive and negative consequences within a certain curriculum. The third is to create an environment that promotes SEL. That may include changing discipline practices to include more inclusionary practices like restorative justice, ensuring that students have a trusted adult in the building that they can go to, and setting the type of behavior and academic expectations that we should expect from students. Number 4 is to provide training and support. Teachers need training, they need professional development, and they need support when you embrace these new programs. 5 is about coordinating. So this should be coordinated school-wide. There should be certain schedules when this is delivered. And there should be tiered intervention systems. And the last is to use data to assess progress. You need to look at your behavior data, you need to look at your observational data and see, is what we're doing working? If it's not, there should be a period of reflection and change should be made. Next steps, the program that has been chosen should be presented to the staff in advance of the school year. This gives the staff and administration familiarity with what's going on. There should be professional development for staff members, so the staff should be made comfortable using the program. There should be assessment, behavior data should be gathered, observational data should be gathered, and recommendations should be made. And then there should also be a period after the program has been started to reflect and adjust accordingly. Some references that I found really helpful were Kenzior and Yoder, when districts support and integrate social and emotional learning. That had a lot to do with measuring a successful program and what it looks like. Shonert Reichel's Social and Emotional Learning and Teachers gave me some really good information about the social emotional health of teachers and what actually causes teachers not to embrace social emotional learning. And then the last was the connection between social emotional learning and learning disabilities, which provided a lot of information about how important social emotional learning is for learning disabled and special ed students. Thank you and have a good day.